This is Becoming Her, a podcast for survivors of abuse or assault to share their stories. I'm your host, Emily Kempe, and I'll be having a conversation with a different survivor each week. I want to be sure to include a strong trigger warning with this podcast. The content we discuss includes topics related to violence. Listener discretion is advised. All right. Hi, and welcome to Becoming Her. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Hi.
Hi. Can you introduce yourself to everybody who's listening?
I'm Lotta, and I'm writing for her almost a year now, I guess, or
Wow.
even longer than a year.
That's awesome.
And I'm very nervous because my English is not my first language. So it's pretty hard to express myself in English, but I will try. I will try my best. So.
Well, and extra special thank you for being able to be willing to be, doubly vulnerable, because I know it can be hard to share your story, but then for you to be able and willing to do it not in your native tongue is really, really special to us, and we really appreciate that. So thank you for being willing to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we'll just kind of start with your story wherever you want to start sharing. So where, what makes the most sense to you? Where do you want to start?
Well, I guess the biggest part of my story is my dad, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Talk to us more about that.
Well, my dad was very abusive.
Okay.
He left our home when I was about 3 years old, but he stalked us a lot, and he was very violent towards me, but also towards my mom, my brother. So I guess that's my biggest trauma, or however you want to name it.
Yeah, no, trauma sounds trauma is the exact word, perfect word for that. And that's really hard when you experience that at such a young age too.
Yeah, I guess that's it's the hard part for me because as a child you can't cooperate with those difficult situations.
Right.
And it's just really hard to understand things and not blame yourself. I guess that's the biggest part for a child who lives in abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of lays a foundation for the future for other problems to happen as well.
Yes, yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So your dad was really abusive, and then you guys tried to kind of get away from him when you were really young. What happened after that?
Well, eventually he died. It was my just after my 18th birthday. Well, we didn't have really contact with him, but he called us a lot and threatened us to kill us and all those things. And just after my 18th birthday, he my uncle came to us, and that's like 3 hours driving, and we never saw him because he chose to leave my dad and not us. And yeah, they came to me or us, and we saw them, and we immediately knew he was dead because he stopped stalking the night before. So we had something like, okay, something isn't right here because they didn't come over easily, like.
Right.
And I guess it's really hard to understand he's dead, because now when I'm like 50 years old, I will not ever be able to confront him with things.
Sure. So there's
But
like a big piece of closure missing.
yes, yeah, I I just always was really afraid of him,
Mm.
and just at the age when I was becoming stronger and um, more able to cope with his abuse, he died, and he chose to die by himself. Like he he even decided that for us as a family,
Mm.
he decided to um, close close that book. To,
Mm-hmm.
well, it wasn't even closed for us. Like, yeah.
Right. So and just to clarify, so you're saying that he committed suicide? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, he was really a drug addict,
Okay.
and we're not sure what happened.
Okay.
Like, my uncle told a lot of different stories.
Sure.
One time, he told us he got a heart attack. One time, he accidentally took an overdose,
Okay.
or even some drug addict on the streets from my brother's work uh, told him he set himself on fire or
Whoa.
something. So we're not we're not really sure what happened, but one thing is sure, like his body stopped working, and it was really related to drugs. Like,
Right.
if you set yourself on fire, that's probably under the influence of drugs.
Right.
So yeah.
So really at the bottom line is that, it was probably the drugs that ultimately kind of
Yeah.
ended things for him. And
Yes.
I want to go back to what you were talking about with like this closure, that he sort of like took away that opportunity from you guys, and that must have been really hard.
Yeah, we chose not to go to his funeral because
Mm.
if somebody's dead, they always speak positive about them.
Right.
Um, and for us, he wasn't positive at all, so we didn't want to get confronted with all those lies and things. Um, so we chose to close it by ourselves. Like, I wrote a letter, my mom wrote a letter, and my brother, um, he didn't really wrote a letter, but he chopped the wood. We
Nice.
chopped the wood. We
That's awesome.
we set the letters on fire. So that was his way of
Fire
expressing.
and wood chopping. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cathartic.
Yeah.
And also really I don't know what the right word is, but like I think it's very telling of like the unit that you have with your mom and your brother, that you guys were able to do that together. That's special. I don't know if special is the right word, but I think it's very poignant that you all did that together.
Yes, yeah, we are a really close family
Hmm.
because we went through a lot together, and we're just so strong, the three of us. So that's
Hmm.
really nice, and that's still the way it goes around here. Like, when something bad happens, my brother is always there for me, my mom is
Hmm.
always there for me. So that's somehow the positive side of all
Sure.
this.
Yeah. Um
Because
yeah, I'm interested to know too how you feel like all of these experiences have affected you or your family.
well, like a year ago, I didn't really believe it affected me at all. Like,
Mm.
I knew some weird things of me, like checking the door locks and all those kind of things, were because of my dad. And but I didn't really think it affected me that much. I was convinced it only affected my brother and my mother because
Hmm.
they like my brother was 4 years older, so he must
Okay.
remember a lot more.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but now I'm in therapy, and I'm realizing it affects me a lot more than I should want to. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's when it's hindsight 2020, that's like a phrase that we have in the United States about like, okay, well now that you're an adult, you can look back at that experience, but when you're a kid and you're in it, you don't know what's happening. But when you're that little and that trauma is affecting the way that the brain is like physically developing, and you might not be able to come into the enough level of awareness to realize how it's affected you until much later.
Yeah.
And that's hard. But that's what therapists are for. They're great. They can help us through those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really thankful for my therapist.
Mm.
So yeah, it's going a lot better with me since I've started with her. I already have like 4 years therapy of her.
Nice.
But at first I didn't really talk about traumas a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I more was there for um, personal development.
Sure.
But now I'm grown a lot more, and now I'm ready to face the trauma. So it's hard, but it's nice, really.
Yeah, and I really
So,
appreciate that you talk about like how long it took you, like 4 years
yeah,
before you're ready. And I don't think people kind of think like, oh, well, I'll go to therapy and I'll just like get it all out and fix everything. It's like it can take a long time before you really feel comfortable sharing.
yeah, and that's something I need to realize myself. Like the abuse was took 17 years,
Mm,
18 years. Like, how can I even process it in 1 year? That's
right.
impossible.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, it takes time. And if people aren't ready to talk about it, they don't have to. I think it can be
Mm.
really re traumatizing if people try and force themselves to talk about it because they think that they should. And it's more, there is no like timeline, it's just whenever you're ready, and that can take a lot longer.
Yes, that's exactly how we work. Like, sometimes I need to talk about things that happens in my environment and how that affects me, and then some somehow a trauma pops up,
Mm,
like, and I need to talk about that. But
mm-hmm.
sometimes I just have 3 weeks of nothing, and I tell my therapist I don't want to talk about hard things because it's going great, and I
Yeah,
just want to keep that hard jar of shitty things
right.
just shut.
Right.
Just leave me alone, and let me be happy. So then we talk about more, yeah, other kind of things like spiritual stuff or something.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I think like it's important to lean into those moments where you feel really good. You don't have to force yourself to try and relive the trauma if you're just not there in any given moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's so hard to talk about things you like, because I was so young. I don't even remember things specifically.
Right.
Um, and it's really hard to think about why I react uh, that hard on little things.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to wake up more hidden memories or something,
Right.
That's a really important thing, I guess, if you're traumatized at a really young age. um, I I personally want to know everything, but I
Mm,
know I'm not ready for everything. I'm
right.
ready for the things that pop up, and I need to fix that. And in the meantime, I'll wait
Right.
until something pops up again. So yeah.
Right. I think that sounds like a really healthy approach. Good strategy. So I know it sounds like for you, part of your healing process is like sharing and talking about things. And I know, like you said, you've been writing for We Are Her for almost a year. Can you talk about what that experience has been like for you?
Writing for me is really healing somehow. I wrote a lot in my own language, but I never shared it with anyone, or I don't know. It was just some diary thing for
Sure.
me. But now I'm writing for We Are Her, and somehow even people don't comment on it, or even I'm not sure how many people read it or anything like that. It's just the feeling you share it with anyone, even if it's someone in America. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's that makes it even more safe for me to write everything down and share it with people. It's just gives me a lot of confidence.
Yeah. And I think there's a big difference with like writing just for yourself and then writing for other people to read it, and like just to kind of like put that out in the universe and trust that, someone who needs to read it will read it.
Yeah. And I really hope, or I wish I should have read my own stories like 5 years ago.
Oh,
Things
interesting.
would have been much easier for me to accept that I am a victim to, or something like that. I always thought I shouldn't pity about it or anything, and that made me bottle up my emotions a lot.
Yes.
And that ended up in self-harm and unhealthy ways to cope with my emotions. So I really hope someone will read it and feel like I feel now. I'm allowed to feel sad, and I'm allowed to feel depressed, and I'm allowed to be affected by the things that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's such a simple way of saying it, but it's so, I think it's something that survivors struggle with a lot. It's like, I shouldn't feel this way, or I should have done this, or I should. And I really like the language that you use with like, no, I'm allowed to feel sad and strong. I'm allowed to be depressed and healing at the same time.
Yeah, that's really important. I'm also learning like a year ago or something, I thought when I'm healing, I don't deserve any attention. I don't deserve any help because I'm healed, right? But now I'm healed, not fully, but partially. And but I'm still sometimes sad, and I'm still affected. And when you're healed or in a recovery process, it doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have bad days or something, or not allowed to have help, or that's really important to know that even if you're the happiest person on the earth, you're allowed to get help and get support.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message. And I also too wanted to just go back to something you were saying about like not knowing if, your writing or your sharing is going to help anybody. And I think a lot of people feel that way, but I do think, and it's very similar to this podcast. I've had similar thoughts to myself where I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know, like, I'm not doing this with any expectation that it's going to be like the most popular thing or thousands of people are going to hear it. But if it could help one person, then it's worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. If it just helps one person. And I think I think it does. I think it really does, because this is an issue that so many people have experienced, that even though people's stories are a little bit different, they can hear your story or read your story and find pieces of it that are true for them too. And that makes people feel less alone.
Yeah, really. And the attitude, like the way someone thinks about themselves and how they cope with things, that's really important too. Like I had a lot of support from Kenta, Strong Like a Fighter. She writes for you too. And
Wow.
she lives in my country as well, so that's pretty awesome. And I never met her or something, but only her mindset and her positive view, and or at least trying to be positive,
Yeah.
it made a lot of difference for me, even though our stories are not the same at all.
But to see somebody else trying to heal is like
Yeah.
inspiring. Yeah, totally. And I think that's what platforms like this are all about, is just showing people and helping connect them so that they don't feel alone, and there's something just like intrinsically healing about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, is there, I guess, we're in a bit of a shorter episode this week, which is okay, but I just want to, before we wrap up, kind of give you an opportunity to share anything else that you might want to, or maybe give a message to any survivor out there who might be listening, something that you think they might need to hear.
I want to tell anyone, like, your feelings are important, and you can believe yourself. Like, don't doubt your feelings, your gut, or anything like that. I guess that made a lot of difference for me when I started to accept my feelings, my emotions are okay. So I hope anyone who listens, please believe me, just accept your feelings and talk about things, and your feelings are always valid. Or
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
right word. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for writing for her and for being on the podcast. And just so you know, your English is spectacular. So you have nothing to worry about.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much, Lotta.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to check out our online community at weareher.net. If you or someone you know has experienced abuse or assault, you can always call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233.